Hello, this is TelecomTV reporting from OPNFV Summit in Berlin in Germany. I'm talking with Chris Price, who is strategist open source at Ericsson. It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Thanks, Martin. It's good to see you.
Let's go straight into it. OPNFV will be two whole years old in September. Hasn't time flown? Do you think it's lived up to its expectations in that time? How's it evolving? How's it going? And how does Ericsson participate?
I think everyone had different expectations when they came in. Some realistic, some not so realistic. I think a lot of people have learnt a lot during that process, and maybe the expectations they had when they began have changed as well. Could we be doing more than we are? I think there is a lot of room for improvement and a lot of room to achieve more. I think from a number of people, their expectations were that we would have achieved more. Looking at what we have achieved, it has been astounding. It has surpassed a lot of people's expectations. So it depends how you came into the project, what you were expecting from it. But I think from my personal perspective, the breadth of what we've managed to achieve is enormous. And it's just really having an impact on how Ericsson works and engages with our customers, how we plan our products, and how we see our interactions with other open source communities.
Okay, thank you. Given that short lifespan so far, there's been a huge number, a plethora, as I wrote here, of open source initiatives and bodies out there that have appeared from nowhere over the past couple of years. Which ones are you participating in?
Ericsson participates in projects really related to the NFV space. OPNFV, OpenStack, Open Daylight, Open vSwitch, the foundational projects are where we keep our focus. We also participate in projects such as the ONOS project, the new FDIO project. We're members of the OpenO project in Mano. And we're really exploring some of those technologies, and you can use open source both to help drive product, but also to explore opportunities. There is a wealth of communities coming through. There could be less, for sure. There are some where there's a very, very tight overlap, and it's a matter of, I guess, the industry in general coalescing around those that it believes in. And what we'll see is, those deviations that did set some communities apart should really sort of integrate into, the de facto solutions that are.
We've seen over a long time in the history of telecoms the fact that once a bandwagon starts to roll, there are organisations that appear that are keen to jump on it for reasons to do with money or prestige or influence, whatever it may be. And that's happening again this time round, it would appear. But you at OPNFV, you're not your job is not to be an arbiter or to decide on who's a winner or who's a loser. It's to take the input from the member parties, interested parties, and do what with them?
So we provide an opportunity for success for an open source project. I think that's the best way of putting it. We create an environment whereby we can work with any open source community that wants to engage in an NFV domain, and we can bring them in to see how they work with other communities, to see how their features are able to be leveraged and exercised, to help them prove their value to the industry. That also comes with the possibility of not being able to prove your value to the industry or proving that you're the equivalent of someone else. Equivalence is fine, choice is fine, competition is great, collaboration is better, and that's what we focus on in OPNFV. We don't want to choose winners, we want to work with everyone. We would like everyone to be successful, and at the end of the day, my firm belief at least is that even if everyone is successful in their own projects, they will eventually come together just through common sense.
What we've also seen throughout the history of telecoms is consolidation and coalescence anyway is a matter of survival.
Yes.
In many ways. So presumably that might happen as well further down the line, but let's not speculate on that.
No.
Put you on the spot a bit then. Can you name some use cases and some real experience of using open source to deploy NFV for telcos?
So Ericsson has been working with Docomo for some time. I'm not in the product teams myself, so I'm not actually completely familiar with whom I can share, but I know I can talk about the Docomo engagement. So we worked with Docomo to establish virtualization solutions for them to bring a number of applications, telco applications, online in their live network. And we continue to work with them in partnership, both in OPNFV, for instance, to develop and collaborate on new features that they need in the platforms that we would then be able to consume and produce back to them and bring into their networks for them.
Another one then, do you think service providers are really ready for open source? And I don't just mean in terms of technically, but also in terms of culturally and organisationally.
Yeah, so technically, yes. Technically, it's a great place for technicians to come and see and learn and explore. There is no question that everyone's ready there. As far as operationally, organisationally we can say, but really I think operationally, working with open source implies that it implies a different way of working with the software. It's no longer, this is a piece of software and I will buy it every 6 months and so on and so forth. It's now more of a flowing growth of capabilities within a community that you want to see in your network. But when you see that in your network, you also see other things that you didn't necessarily intend and don't necessarily have control of. And so there is a risk associated with working with open source technologies, and that risk is something that we have to learn to deal with. And I personally believe the only way we're going to get there is by experience. It's that culture has to change by trying to find ways around the inhibitors.
Thank you. Changing the subject slightly, but still obviously with open source, what do you think, in your experience and what you've heard and what you know, what do service providers want from open source in general, as a concept, as a way of being, as a philosophy, whatever it might be?
Open source, free as in beer. I think that's every I can imagine all the operators when they're going to sleep at night dreaming of waking up in the morning and getting new software without cost. I mean, it's but no, it's I think what they really firmly believe is that the areas where we collaborate the most and where we see the most industry value for working in open source are the areas where we don't see a lot of differentiation or the places where we can do the most good, where we don't really need to differentiate. They're the focus areas for open source, and they're the parts where I think we will see a lot of joint benefit. I believe operators want to see that joint benefit as much as the vendors do. We want to be able to sell things to our customers which help them make money, and infrastructure is an enabler for that, not necessarily the end goal. So.
Don't let's forget that those of us who inhabit pubs from time to time have seen the sign which says free beer. But it always says tomorrow underneath it, doesn't it? Presumably the same applies to open source.
Exactly.
A final question to you then, Chris. Again, looking at it from a service provider's viewpoint, what do you think SPs want from the vendor community, Ericsson, among others, in relation to open source?
When dealing with the vendors, transparency, it's the obvious. Being able to see what's occurring, knowing what's coming, having that transparency, not control, just transparency. And I think the other thing that really comes from the value of open source as a collaborative development activity is the collaboration. I think that's really what's changing the industry. Putting my source code on GitHub isn't changing the industry. Collaborating with my competitors, with my customers, collaborating with people that are dependent on me in an open community, that's what's changing the industry. And I think that's what they want to see from us.
Very interesting answer. Do you think that service providers do actually accept that they are likely to have less control under open source when open source becomes, de facto in charge of everything?
Well, they will have influence. And to be honest, once we start to build trust amongst those developing the software and those consuming the software, and that trust is inherent in the way we're approaching this. Once that trust starts to really flourish, you don't need to control. You trust that the people that you're dealing with have the same concerns and desires and wants as you do as far as your network is concerned. So I don't believe they will need the control or desire the control, really. I think there will be occasions when they may be disappointed. But there's more likely to be occasions where they're happily surprised by things they didn't expect.
Good and very diplomatic answer. Chris Price, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.